The roadside motel. The kind of exhaustion I felt wasn't the type you could shake off with a cup of coffee or a quick nap. It was the kind that clung to you, seeping into your bones after hours of driving on endless, empty highways. The sun had set hours ago, and the countryside was swallowed by a darkness so thick it felt almost tangible. My eyelids were heavy, my thoughts blurry, and my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I squinted through the windshield, searching for any sign of civilization. That's when I saw it, a small, weathered motel sign glowing faintly in the distance. Asterisk, Sunset Motel, vacancy. Asterisk. The sign flickered weakly, as if it were on its last legs, and the motel itself looked like it had been forgotten by time. The parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds, and the building was a relic of the 1970s, with peeling paint and a neon light that buzzed intermittently. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts whispering that this place was wrong, but my fatigue won out. I needed to rest, and this was the only option for miles. I parked my car, the gravel crunching under the tires, and stepped out into the cool night air. The motel was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint hum of insects in the distance. The lobby was dimly lit, with a musty smell that clung to the air like a damp blanket. Behind the counter stood an old man, his face wrinkled and his eyes dull, as if he hadn't slept in years. He gave me a strange, almost knowing smile as he handed me the key to room 104. "You're our only guest tonight," he said, his voice raspy and low. "Well, except for the gentleman in room 106. I nodded, too tired to question it. As I walked down the hallway, the floorboards creaked under my feet, each step echoing in the silence. The motel felt abandoned, save for the faint hum of a vending machine at the end of the hall. That's when I saw him, the other guest. He was standing outside room 106, his back to me. He was tall and thin, wearing a dark coat that seemed to blend into the shadows. For a moment, I thought he might turn and acknowledge me, but he didn't. He just stood there, perfectly still, as if frozen in time. I quickened my pace, unlocked my door, and slipped inside. The room was small and dated, with floral wallpaper that had started to peel at the edges. I dropped my bags on the bed and sat down, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me. The walls were paper thin. I could hear the faint sound of a TV from the next room, room 106. But it wasn't a show or a movie. It was just static. A low, monotonous hiss that seemed to stretch on endlessly. I told myself it was nothing, just an old TV left on by mistake. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The whisper in the night. I fell asleep quickly, but it wasn't restful. My dreams were fragmented and unsettling, filled with shadows and whispers I couldn't quite make out. Faces flickered in and out of view, their expressions twisted in fear or anger, and I felt like I was being watched, even in my sleep. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., I woke up with a start. The room was freezing. I could see my breath in the air, even though the heater was on. I sat up, my heart pounding, and that's when I heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible, coming from the hallway. I held my breath, straining to listen. The whisper grew louder, more distinct. It was a voice, but I couldn't make out the words. Sounded angry, desperate. I got out of bed and crept to the door, pressing my eye against the peephole. The hallway was dimly lit, but I could see room 100's door. It was wide open, the room inside pitch black. The man I had seen earlier was gone. My stomach churned. I told myself to go back to bed, to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the door and peeked out. The hallway was empty, but the static from room 100's TV was louder now, almost deafening. I stepped closer to the open door, my heart racing. The room was completely dark, but I could feel something, a presence, a weight in the air. I reached for the light switch, but before I could flip it, the static stopped. The silence was deafening. Then, from behind me, I heard a voice, a low, guttural whisper. "Why are you in my room?" I spun around, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands trembling. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. The old receptionist answered after a few rings. His voice groggy. "Yes, there's someone outside my door," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think it's the man from room 106. There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "Son, there is no room 106. My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "I saw him. He was standing outside his door when I arrived." Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was grave. "That room has been empty for years. No one stayed there since the accident." My throat went dry. What accident?" The line went silent for so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, he said, "The last guest in that room never checked out. The escape." I didn't wait to hear more. I grabbed my bags and bolted out the door, not bothering to look back. The hallway was empty, but I could feel eyes on me, watching me from the shadows. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys as I threw my bags inside. As I sped out of the parking lot, I glanced at the motel one last time. And there, in the window of room 106, was the man. He was smiling, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far across his face. And he was waving as if to say goodbye. I never stayed in a roadside motel again, but sometimes late at night I hear the static, and I wonder, did I really leave that place behind? Or is it still with me, waiting for the right moment to pull me back in? The mysterious ending. Years have passed since that night, but I still can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. Sometimes, when I'm driving alone on a dark road, I'll see a flicker of light in the distance, a neon sign glowing faintly in the night. And I wonder, is it just my imagination? Or is the Sunset Motel still out there, waiting for its next guest? I've tried to rationalize it, to tell myself it was just a bad dream or a trick of the mind. But the memories are too vivid, too real. The static, the whispers, the man in the window, they haunt me even now. One night, I decided to confront my fears. I drove back to the spot where the motel had been, determined to prove to myself that it was all in my head. But when I arrived, there was nothing there, just an empty field, overgrown with weeds and bathed in moonlight. I stood there for a long time, staring at the emptiness, until I heard it, a faint, familiar hiss. Static. It was coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. And then a whisper, so close it felt like it was right behind me. "Welcome back." I didn't stay to investigate. I ran to my car and drove away, my heart pounding in my chest. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw it. A flicker of light, a neon sign glowing faintly in the distance.